You know, there's something that almost nobody seems to be noticing. Everyone's talking about the rapture, right? But what if it's already here? What if this thing that everyone is talking about is actually something else, something much deeper, and it's already happening right at this very moment? I know that might sound hard to believe, but I promise if you stick with me, it's going to make sense soon. You weren't meant to miss this moment, but the truth is, not everyone will see it for what it is before it's too late. And if you're sitting there, thinking this doesn't really affect you, well, I've got some news for you. This shift isn't going to leave anyone untouched. It doesn't matter if you believe in prophecy, astrology, or absolutely nothing at all. Your life is already bumping up against this current. The energy of the collective is just too powerful. It doesn't really ask for permission, you know. It just pulls everything into its motion. And here's the real twist. The people who fight it the hardest are the ones who are going to feel it the most. This is exactly why being aware is so important. If you don't see what's actually unfolding, you're going to get dragged along by it instead of rising with it. The Feast of Trumpets has always had this air of mystery around it. But what if the trumpet wasn't some horn blasting in the sky, but a signal that's vibrating deep inside of you? Think about it for a second. Have you felt a sudden restlessness that you just can't explain? Or maybe a pull to step away from all the meaningless habits you used to just put up with? It's a feeling like something inside you has been sparked back to life, almost as if your soul was just shaken awake. That's the trumpet. It's not a sound you hear with your ears. It's a call you feel down in your bones. The chosen ones often describe it as this kind of inner shock, a summons that just refuses to let them go back to being who they used to be. It's this deep hunger for purpose, for real alignment, for something more genuine than all the hollow noise of the world. And if you've been feeling that burning urge, that inner pressure to start moving differently, then you've already heard the trumpet. You've already been called out from the crowd. But here's the part that nobody seems to be talking about. The trumpet doesn't just call you forward. It also warns you. It marks the point of no return. Once you hear it, life will simply never feel the same again. Every big shift in history has had its forerunners, right? Those rare people who stand at the very edge of the unknown and decide to step forward while everyone else is still frozen in place. Today, that role really belongs to the chosen ones. They aren't here to preach from a stage or shout from the rooftops. They're here to be the shift. Their lives, the choices they make, and their very presence, that becomes the proof that a new way of being is actually possible. When people talk about a spiritual rapture, a lot of them imagine some kind of escape. But what if it's not about escape at all? What if it's an assignment? The chosen ones aren't leaving the world behind. They're the ones carrying a new map into it. They feel clarity when everyone else is feeling confused. They bring a sense of calm when everything is in chaos. They see patterns that others miss. And that isn't random. That's the calling of a pioneer. Every great turning point in history really begins with a few people who can see what the majority refuses to. And this is exactly what makes the chosen ones so different right now. They're not just reacting to all the change. They are the change. The way they handle their relationships, the way they speak their truth, the way they step away from empty goals, all of it starts to set an example of a whole new rhythm that society is being forced to learn. In that sense, their rapture isn't an escape upward, but a journey inward to bring back the wisdom and balance that humanity so desperately needs. Now, this role definitely comes with some weight. Pioneers never have an easy path. They're often misunderstood, brushed aside, or even made fun of. But you know, that's just the cost of holding a torch in the dark. When they're accused of being different, it's because it's true. They are different. They're different in the same way that trailblazers have always been different. And eventually, the very same people who resisted them will look back and realize it was the chosen ones who carried the world into its next chapter. They don't wait for permission to lead. They just live in such a way that their leadership becomes undeniable. So if you've been feeling pulled out of the ordinary and pushed into a kind of responsibility you never even asked for, please understand this. You're not being punished. You're being positioned. History doesn't remember the people who were comfortable. It remembers the pioneers. We're living in a time where a separation is happening that's becoming impossible to ignore. What if it's this very real division that's happening right here, right now? You might have already started to notice it. Friends who once felt like your family now suddenly feel so distant. Groups that used to give you a sense of comfort now feel heavy, suffocating, almost toxic. It's like two totally different realities are forming in the very same room, and you can literally feel yourself being pulled toward one of them. Those who choose fear are going to cling to illusions. Those who choose truth will rise into clarity. And we're not just talking about quiet differences here. It's visible. It's shocking. Even people you thought would be by your side for life might suddenly turn on you. Some will fight to stay trapped in what's comfortable, while others are driven, almost against their will, into a higher state of awareness. This is the separation of the crowds. It's messy, and yeah, it's painful. But it's also the undeniable sign that this spiritual rapture has already started. And once you see it, you really can't unsee it. That equinox on September 22nd didn't show up with a big fireworks display. It moved more like a quiet, massive shift. That single moment of exact balance between light and dark wasn't just some date on a calendar. It really acted like a hinge. For one brief, precise instant, the scales were perfectly matched. And then one side tipped. That tip is what a lot of people are calling the equinox trigger. It wasn't a loud boom. It was a turn, a handing over of momentum from the old patterns into a new current of who we are. Think of it like the planet just paused, took a deep breath, and then chose a new direction. After that, coincidences started stacking up faster than usual, and decisions that used to take months were suddenly figured out in a day. Some people literally woke up feeling like their entire life had been rearranged around them. Jobs that once seemed okay suddenly felt unbearable. Relationships that had been around for years started to show cracks overnight. On a bigger scale, all these little things added up and created a momentum that just couldn't be ignored anymore. This is the moment the crowd splits into two different motions: those who drift back to sleep and those who accelerate into becoming someone else entirely. The equinox basically handed the world a new tempo. You either learn the new rhythm, or the rhythm just leaves you behind. And this isn't some prophecy dressed up in poetic language. It's a practical observation. The timing of it really matters. When a balance like that collapses, it forces a selection. It doesn't choose who is worthy. It just reveals who is already aligned. For some people, the equinox was a merciless clarifier. Habits that once fit like their favorite pair of jeans suddenly started to feel all wrong. Things they used to tolerate just dissolved. For others, it felt like a lift, a sudden easing, as if a huge weight had been taken off their shoulders. Either way, the 22nd created a visible before and after in people's lives. And the separation that's following it isn't subtle anymore. It shows up in job resignations, in sudden moves across the country, in friends just drifting apart like leaves on different currents. And the real kicker? Many people didn't see it coming because they were taught to look for signs on the outside. The equinox didn't show up as a headline in their life. It arrived as an internal pressure, a reordering that worked quietly but incredibly quickly. If you felt doors closing and others opening all at the same time, if big life decisions suddenly felt strangely obvious and urgent, that was the equinox doing its work. It didn't destroy, it clarified. It didn't punish, it filtered. It just set a new baseline for everyone. And from that point on, the separation became measurable in the choices that used to feel optional but now feel mandatory. After that turning point, the old world starts to feel heavy in a way you can't just laugh off. It's not just feeling bored or the usual burnout. It's a fundamental mismatch. Imagine trying to wear a suit of clothes that no longer fits because your entire body shape has changed. Crowds that used to feel energizing now feel like a room full of static electricity. Conversations that were once so easy now require an effort that you just can't be bothered to make. There's this subtle but unmistakable feeling of repulsion. Everything small, petty, and shallow suddenly feels like it's weighing you down. And this heaviness shows up in everyday ways with really dramatic results. Meetings you used to sit through now feel intolerable. Small talk feels abrasive. Family dynamics that were built on unspoken rules and old roles start to break, because those roles just don't match the new vibration of the person sitting at the table. People who used to be your anchors now feel like they're just weighing you down. The chosen ones, those who answered that inner call, are experiencing life like they're carrying two worlds at once, physically present in the old one, but energetically rising into the new one. That split creates friction. That friction becomes heat, and that heat brings change. The old world doesn't beg you to leave it. It just becomes unbearable for those who refuse to keep pretending. This explains all the sudden exits you're seeing everywhere. The quiet, clean breaks, the abrupt relocations, the jobs abandoned for no obvious reason. It's not about escaping. It's the body and the soul refusing to cooperate with a life that no longer matches their new frequency. And because this separation is about relationships as much as it is about what's inside you, the heaviness isn't just a solo experience. It radiates outward. People start to notice who's moving with them and who's not. That difference becomes the obvious reason some friendships deepen into this fierce loyalty, while others just dissolve without so much as a goodbye. What's really important to understand here is that this heaviness isn't a moral failure on anyone's part. It's an energetic reality. For those who are rising, it feels like a clearing out. For those who are staying, it's a shelter of what's familiar. Both reactions are perfectly human. The drama comes when these two worlds are still trying to live in the same social spaces, workplaces, families, neighborhoods, and neither side can pretend the other's experience isn't real. That tension is the engine of transformation right now. And inside of it, you'll find both the pain of loss and the possibility of a completely new way of being. But here's where things get a little paradoxical. As the chosen ones rise into this role of being pioneers, many of them feel this forceful pull away from the very crowds they are meant to influence. And this isn't because they've become too sensitive or too fragile. It's because real transformation never happens in the middle of all the noise. It happens in the silence. Think about every forge in history. Metal isn't shaped in the busy market square, is it? It's shaped in the fire, away from all the distractions, in the stillness where the heat can actually do its work. In the same way, chosen ones are being drawn into solitude. They're stepping back from the endless conversations, the constant activity, and the shallow entertainment, not to hide, but to harden. This solitude isn't an escape from life. It is the birth chamber of a new self. Isolation is not a punishment. It is preparation. And this isolation doesn't always look like going off to live in the mountains. It can happen right in the middle of a crowded city, when someone simply loses interest in the noise around them and begins to live from a completely different rhythm. They might still show up to work, to family gatherings, to their daily duties, but they carry a private space within them, a sanctuary where they are being reforged. This is why chosen ones often seem a little detached or less available during these times of transition. It's not arrogance. It's not that they're disconnected. It's focus. They are being pulled into themselves so that when they emerge unshakable. And it is in that solitude that the rapture becomes undeniable, because they rise above the crowd while still standing right there among it. Those who embrace this solitude now will carry a strength that the crowd can't even imagine later on. And the truth is, this isolation isn't forever. It's seasonal. Just like a caterpillar disappears into a cocoon, the chosen ones have to vanish into silence for a little while. But the world knows what comes next, right? When they return, they will not return as the same person. They will return as the living proof that transformation is real, and that the rapture has already begun. Most people are still waiting for the rapture as if it's some big headline event, something they'll see on the news or hear about from someone else. But what if it has already started for the chosen ones? And the proof isn't found where you think it is. It's found in your everyday life, in the things you feel, in the subtle shifts that nobody else can really explain. Maybe this is what it was all about this whole time. You've probably noticed it already. When the world goes into chaos, when everyone else is spiraling in fear, you feel strangely untouchable. Not in an arrogant kind of way, but in a way that feels almost otherworldly. Panic just doesn't grab you like it used to. Fearful news doesn't rattle you the same way it does other people. It's as if a shield has been placed around your spirit, and no matter what storm hits, you're still standing. That's not luck. That's alignment. That's the rapture already pulling you up above all the noise. Feeling peace in the middle of chaos is not normal. It's the mark of those who are already rising, and people notice it, even if they can't explain it. They're drawn to you. They seek out your presence without really knowing why. Friends might call you just to hear the sound of your voice. Strangers might open up to you about things they would never normally share. In their confusion, they recognize your clarity, even if they can't put words to it. That magnetic pull is not random. It's the energy of the rapture moving through you, lifting you into a place where you become a lighthouse for others who are still lost in the fog. What used to scare you now just looks powerless. The things that once seemed like giants now feel like simple shadows on the wall. Old habits, old fears, even old people who once intimidated you. They just don't carry the same weight anymore. You can see straight through them. That shift isn't your imagination. It's not denial. It's evolution. It's the spiritual rapture stripping away illusions and showing you how powerless those things really are when you stop feeding them with your fear. Fear only controls you when you bow to it. The moment you rise, it bows to you. And maybe the strangest sign of all is this unshakable pull to rise. It feels almost physical at times, like gravity itself can't hold you down the way it used to. You wake up with a sense that something bigger is happening, that your life has already crossed into new territory. You can't go back to meaningless distractions because they just taste hollow now. You can't force yourself to shrink back into who you used to be, because that version of you doesn't even exist anymore. This could be the proof. The prophecy is here. It's inside of you. It's the invisible elevation that explains why you don't think, feel, or move like the crowd anymore. Others might be waiting for a trumpet, but you already heard it. Others might be waiting for a savior in the clouds, but you already rose. And the most shocking part, you're only at the very beginning of what this rapture is about to make of you. At some point soon, you're going to notice the way people look at you has changed. Not because you made them, but because something about you now sits on a different shelf of reality. People who used to just breeze past you without a second glance will suddenly pause. Those who once mocked or dismissed you will start asking you questions, but with a new tone in their voice, like they finally realize there's something they don't understand. And they want in. This shift isn't about fame or getting approval. It's about presence. You start to occupy a space in other people's minds that wasn't there before, simply because your internal shape has shifted and your life no longer matches the small expectations they once had for you. It's subtle at first. A longer look in the eyes, a tone of voice that carries curiosity instead of dismissal, maybe a handshake that lingers just a second longer. Then it becomes obvious. Colleagues who once overlooked your input will start asking for your opinion. Old friends who used to minimize you will suddenly ask for your perspective. Strangers will confide in you on the street. People don't change because you want them to. They change because your presence makes them curious. And that curiosity pulls them toward you. They're sensing something that isn't about words. They're sensing a steadiness, a clarity, the kind of calm that makes chaos just look like noise. This isn't manipulation. This isn't vanity. It's the simple physics of resonance. When your life lines up with a different standard, you vibrate in a way that other people just can't ignore. They start to measure you against their old categories and find that the categories don't fit anymore. That mismatch causes attention. Attention leads to questions. Questions lead to interest. And interest, when it's sincere, changes relationships. People who once mattered because they reinforced your old identity now flip into totally new roles. They become backseat passengers, or critics, or even suddenly, your biggest supporters. The whole social map just redraws itself around you. The respect you get is a mirror of your own inner work. When you stop pretending, the world starts listening. You might also notice a strange social dynamic where the people who were once the loudest about you become much quieter, and those who barely even noticed you come forward. It can be confusing because it feels so random, like one day the world just decided to rewrite its script without asking you. But it isn't random. It's a response. The world is recalibrating to a new signal, and it's choosing who to follow based on who's actually living by it. Doors will open in ways that used to require years of begging. Opportunities will appear because people trust the steadiness they now sense in you. You will be treated differently, not because you're louder, but because you're truer. What if this whole prophecy was actually about the next stage of human growth, and it's unfolding right in front of our eyes? Not some vanishing act, not a final curtain call, but just a natural step in the long story of consciousness. For centuries, humanity has been wrestling with these huge questions of meaning, identity, and truth. Now, it feels like those questions are finally reaching a boiling point. Something is shifting, not just in a few isolated seekers or mystics, but across entire groups of people. The way we see life, our relationships, and even time itself is changing. The rapture might not be an ending at all. It might be an evolution. Just look around and you'll start to notice it. Conversations that would have been called fringe a decade ago are now on everyone's lips. People who never cared about spirituality are suddenly searching for answers. Even the biggest skeptics feel a strange pressure in the air, as though their own routines just don't satisfy them anymore. This is not a coincidence. When enough individuals start to elevate their own awareness, society itself begins to tilt. It makes perfect sense when you think about it. Every era of history has had its major leaps, right? Fire, language, electricity, the digital age. Why would human consciousness be any different? The greatest evolution isn't in our tools, but in how we see the world. Perhaps what we're witnessing right now is the collective nervous system of humanity rewiring itself, preparing us to live not as broken, fearful individuals, but as beings who finally recognize their unity and their responsibility to each other. The trumpets, the prophecies, the warnings, they might all just be metaphors pointing toward this very shift. But remember, this is just a spiritual take on the prophecy. We don't know for sure, but it could very well be what was meant all along. Of course, the truth is we can't fully know. We don't know for sure if this is the rapture, or the Great Awakening, or just another wave in the ongoing sea of human change. What we do know is that it feels different. The energy is undeniable. The sense that something has already begun is just too strong to ignore. Maybe this is what was intended all this time, not waiting to be lifted out of the earth, but finally realizing we were always meant to bring heaven right here. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need to figure it all out at once. You don't need to put a label on it or even believe in it for it to be real. Evolution doesn't ask for our permission. It simply happens. If the rapture really is a spiritual evolution, then every single step you take in honesty, in clarity, and in awareness is already proof that you're a part of it. The best news is, this isn't a story of loss or fear, or of leaving people behind. It's a story of becoming more alive, more awake, more present. So maybe the rapture isn't coming. Maybe it's already here. And maybe it's less about waiting for the end and more about realizing we've just stepped into the beginning. If you're still watching, I just want to say thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed this and want to see more like it, please think about clicking that subscribe button. Your support is so very appreciated. And feel free to share your own experiences or thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, take care and subscribe for more insightful content.